Hey everybody, it's Chris back with another live video review. Today we are going to take a look at a book chapter sent in by Elizabeth Watkins. This is we're going to take a look at chapter 1 of her book, Resilience. And this is a long chapter, 18-ish pages, 7,000 words. I'm going to set a timer here for 20 minutes. I don't want these videos to get too long, so we're just going to review however much we can in those 20 minutes. So, hey Siri, set a timer for 20 minutes. Okay. All right. So resilience across 25 homes, 8 states, from abuse, fundamentalism, and chaos to homelessness. Iditarod dogs, homesteading, and logging Scottish peat bogs. All right. So this book is promising quite a journey. And like I said, we're just going to get into chapter 1 and get as far as we can. Chapter 1, Spiderweb Cracks, Columbia, Maryland. My mother told this story many times, sometimes telling it simply to relate the story of how she survived a traumatic experience, and more often to remind me of how difficult my coming into the world had been for her. As I grew older, I began to not only listen, but had questions. Okay, pretty good setup. Um, my mother told this story. I don't like how story repeats. So, what I would do is my mother told this story many times, sometimes simply to relate how she survived a traumatic experience, and more often to remind me. So, just getting rid of that second instance of story. Little thing, but it did trip me up when I was going through it just now. Okay, so now I think this must be the mother talking. A week before you were born, on the day that you were due, your father and I were walking home from an evening movie. I think it was E.T. We stepped into a crosswalk on a quiet street, and out of nowhere, we heard a car. Seconds before, it smashed into us. It hit your father first. We hadn't seen any headlights. It happened so fast. Even though your father received most of the impact, I was hurt too, knocked down, thrown across the asphalt. It hit me so hard that my glasses flew all the way across the road. Shaking her head, her face an odd mix of excitement and dismay, recalling the audacity of it all. Okay, so what she's doing, Elizabeth has taken us into a particular instance of her mother telling this story, which she set up with that first paragraph. So that works pretty well. Then what happened? I asked. I screamed for help and crawled around on my knees, feeling for my glasses. I couldn't see without them. I got to your father, who was lying in the road, barely conscious and bleeding, and tried to help him. Green eyes wide, hands gesturing dramatically. She looked at me to see if I was listening. Your father lay there, groaning in pain, unable to move, his pants shredded, legs lying at unnatural angles, and broken bones poking through the skin. It was horrifying. She shuddered, nose wrinkled, lip curling. A few I like I like this description because it keeps us in the narrator's head. She's not projecting any feelings on her mother. She's just showing us what she sees. That's well done. A few young Navy men heard me screaming and came running over from the sidewalk where apparently they'd seen the accident happen. How did you know they were from the Navy? I asked, curious about this detail. Because they were wearing uniforms. Don't interrupt me. I'm telling a story. She snapped with a hard glance at me. I looked down, curiosity effectively squelched for the moment. She continued, intent. She told me that the Navy men called the police with a description of the car. The driver was eventually caught and convicted of drunk driving after hitting other pedestrians that day. My dad sent to the hospital by ambulance, and mom checked out and sent home by doctor. It feels like there's something missing there. My dad was right. My dad was sent home. My dad was sent home to the hospital by ambulance, and mom was checked out and sent home by doctors without further ado. Okay, we learned something about mom here, don't we? She sure doesn't like to be interrupted while telling a story. That's interesting. Okay, so yeah, not much more than that. We're just learning a little bit about her. I actually, yeah, I like that. She just lets us, Elizabeth just lets us experience that, right? She doesn't add anything to that. Like my mom always did this, or my mom sure didn't like being interrupted or anything like that. She just shows us and then lets us figure it out. They just sent me home. My glasses had flown 50 feet away from how hard I how hard I'd been hit. Just going to keep an eye on the clock here. My glasses hard I'd been hit, and I was 9 months pregnant, but I was in shock, so didn't argue. Searching my face intently for something, shaking her head with a heavy sigh. Yeah, there's something going on here. We don't know what, but mom's given some signals. You were born at home with a midwife a week after the accident. Your father stayed in the hospital for 4 days. He had extensive surgery to repair the damage to his leg and was in a cast from his foot all the way to his hip for 6 months. He came home a few days before you were born and was confined to a wheelchair for months until his leg healed. She sighed deeply, lips pinching. Again, Elizabeth is just showing us what she sees, not interpreting feelings or anything like that. My hands were full with a newborn baby, a broken husband who needed full-time care, and I had to drop out of college. The intent of telling me this story over and over never became clear. Within a few years, young love turned sour, and with constant friction between them, my parents separated. Shortly before Dad left for the last time, the simmering volcano between my parents turned into a full-fledged eruption. Their voices filled our apartment. Hard, jagged words, obsidian-tipped arrows fired at will, pulled from a quiver of bitterness and anger, slicing deep through all defenses. Barbed with the poison of love turned to anger, impossible to remove and designed to hurt long after impact. Mom was pregnant again. Okay, I'm not quite sure how I feel about. I want to go back up. I like this line because as a reader, I'm jumping to the intent. Like, to me, it's clear. Mom wants Elizabeth to know how much she sacrificed for her. That's the intent of telling this story over and over, right? I think maybe Elizabeth's lucky to be alive and wasn't killed, in before she was born. And the intent of or the sacrifice that mom had to make for her. But it's curious that Elizabeth says she never figures that out. So there's more going on here, and I like how she's doing this. She's setting up several kind of mysteries for us. I'm not sure about this paragraph. It strikes me as a whole lot of telling versus showing. But I might be okay with it. It depends on what comes next. Whose baby is that? Dad yelled. It's yours. What kind of question is that? Mom's voice rose, shrill, angry. I don't believe you. I know you've been seeing other people. Dad gesticulated wildly. I hate you, Mom screamed, running to the kitchen for something to throw. Well, I hate you too. You are a crazy bitch. The dialogue so far has been really good, and I think this is okay. I don't know. I'm struggling with this, full sentence like that. Wouldn't he probably yell, "You're a crazy," or "You are a"? Maybe he was slowing down and saying it like that. He bellowed, stomping across the hardwood living room floor. Get out! Get out of my house! Mom shrieked, launching a dish across the room at Dad, glass shattering, spinning across the floor like a swarm of tiny, jagged spider babies. You get out. This is my house too, damn it, he fired back. Yeah, we need some type of punctuation there. Probably an exclamation point. Voice full of rage, advancing on Mom. F you, you bastard. She spat and dragged me into the bathroom with her, locking the door. Open this door right now. Dad pounded his fists on the door. It shuddered violently under the blows. Mom slumped on the toilet seat, crying, nose running, face twisted with grief and anger, occasionally screaming back at him. It's a little bit of a slip out of perspective here. We're only supposed to be in Elizabeth's head, so Elizabeth is saying face twisted with grief and anger. I mean, it's a pretty safe assumption that Mom was feeling some grief and anger, but it's still an assumption. Whereas before, Elizabeth has just shown us behaviorally what she's seeing. She's interpreting some feelings here. It's just a real slight slip out of perspective. It's probably okay, but I do notice it. Occasionally screaming back at him, I sat quietly on the floor, tears rolling down my cheeks, thumb in my mouth, and my stuffed dog, Benji, in the other hand. Okay, so we don't know we don't know Elizabeth, the narrator's age yet, but she's given us some cues here, isn't she? Which I like. I like that she didn't tell us and she's just letting us figure it out. Curled up small, hugging my knees tight, I watched Mom and the shuttering bathroom door. After that fight, he left for this probably needs to be a new paragraph. After that fight, he left for the final time. They officially separated and divorced a few years later. All right, now we've got a section break. Okay, so we've had a couple of scenes. We've had the story of the parents getting hit by a car. Mom tells that story and kind of wants Elizabeth to learn something from it that Elizabeth apparently isn't picking up on. And then this really kind of violent abuse scene that ends with Dad leaving. All right. Good. Now we have a section break. In preparation for my attending kindergarten in a week, we needed new baby supplies and school clothes, and Mom was anxious about money. All right, we don't know quite where this is in time. Did this happen soon after Dad leaving? We don't need to know yet. I'm just pointing that out. We need to sell some things because your father left us with all the bills and no money. What toys and books can you contribute, Elizabeth? Eager to please her, swallowing my disappointment at parting from any of my beloved things, I volunteered my toys and books. She sold many of her books, clothes and houseplants as well. Word probably wants a comma there. It's my guess. Oxford comma. Yep. Houseplants as well over the course of that fall. After Dad left, Mom and I continued living in the same small apartment, the first home I remember, perched on one of the top floors in a high rise. Like a welcoming smile, it possessed a spacious, bright living room with plants and books lining the walls. My ears soaked in classical music on the radio in the mornings and our happy lovebirds chirping all day. In the evenings, snuggling with my mom on the couch, we watched Robin Hood on TV, and I usually fell asleep before the news came on, with its talk of Reagan and speeches in Berlin. My room was littered with books, dinosaur posters, stuffed animals defending every corner, and I had bats in my closet. Okay, this is cool. So we've been hit with some fairly intense emotional scenes, and now in this section, she's going back and giving us some backstory, and which is really well done. You know, don't start with backstory. Let the backstory unfold over the course of the narrative, and that's exactly what Elizabeth is doing here. So it's a really effective technique. Grab you with the scenes, and then let the backstory unfold. Nope, we don't. We're not anchored in time yet, and she does it really well here by giving us some cues. Robin Hood on TV, Reagan speeches in Berlin. So we're able to place this now in the 80s. So she's going to kindergarten in the 80s. So she was probably either born late 70s, early 80s is kind of the time frame of all this, because we don't know that yet, do we? There's no, yeah, no, we know place, but we don't know time. Okay, good, very well done. And I like this transition too. And I had bats in the closet. Now we're going into another scene, I think. Do not open that closet door, Elizabeth, Mom said, reminding me often. She hated bats. I stopped to listen, putting my ear against the door when they started their squeaking and rustling. They got into the closet through an unsealed vent to the outside, and so we never used the closet. I considered opening the door to see as I lay on the floor, listening to them, building model dinosaur skeletons and leafing through my world history for children book for hours on end. My imagination captured by the pictures and stories of exotic people and places within its pages. Climbing into bed, my music box from uh, great grandma Bess. There's a little bit of an issue here from great grandma Bess, great grandma comma Bess. I would probably do this. Let's just give her a name. Great grandma. Get rid of that. Climbing into bed, my music box from Great Grandma Bess played softly as I fell asleep. Okay, this is tripping me up because climbing into bed technically is referring to the music box. So that's what's getting me hung up. The music box isn't climbing into bed, obviously, Elizabeth is. As I climbed into bed, my music box from Great Grandma Bess played softly as I fell asleep. Any soothing melodies, comforting and familiar. Many nights, plagued by nightmares, I scrambled out of my bed and ran down the short hall to climb into my mother's bed and take her hand. Bad dreams fled every time, as yet unaware that the ephemeral darkness haunting my dreams lurked latent beneath her skin. Okay. It's a bit of a cliffhanger ending with that section. And that's okay. It's definitely telling. And the advice is show don't tell. It's not always show never tell. Sometimes you need to tell. And in this case, it's probably appropriate that she's because she is setting up a cliffhanger. And we're starting to get, I'm definitely getting a feeling that there's more here than what she's telling us. And we're gonna see as we continue to read what that more is. All right, a little bit of time left, so we'll head into the next section. On one of our glorious fall walks around my favorite lake, the year before my dad moved out for the last time, we were feeding the ducks, while Mom noticed a strange man with a toddler. So it's cool how she's kind of jumping around, and now she's going back to before the fight. So Elizabeth is really young now, right? She's probably 3, I'm guessing. Um, Mom noticed a strange man with a toddler. Hello, what a cute little girl. Mom leaned back against a bench, running a hand through her short, dark hair. It's unclear who says this until you get to the next, and you realize, okay, if that's Lewis, then this must have been Mom talking. So we need some sort of indication that Mom's talking here, because here the last person mentioned is strange man with a toddler. So I'm thinking the strange man must be saying this, and the cute girl is Elizabeth, and that's creepy. But that's not what's happening. So we need a hello, what a cute little girl, comma, Mom said as she leaned back against a bench. Okay. Hiya, thank you. I'm Lewis and this is Dia. I see you have a daughter too, replied a deep voice. Looking up, I saw a cocky grin on a tall, angular man with eyes of jet, tightly curled black hair, and mahogany skin. He stood very straight, shoulders back, head up, direct gaze on Mom. Okay, this guy's creepy. I would replace that with the, because like it's pretty clear that she's talking about Lewis, but she may have seen another guy. So just make it clear and say the on the tall, angular man. The makes it clear that she's referring to Lewis. Yes, this is Elizabeth. She's 4. She ruffled my mop of auburn curls. Lovely, petite, curvy, with skin like smooth cream, and green eyes framed by dark, almost black wavy hair. Mom flirted confidently. Elizabeth, why don't you and Dia go play over there? She nudged me forward from where I was hiding behind her legs. Hi, Dia. Elizabeth, why don't you and Dia go play over there? Okay, so this is Mom again. Yep. All right. I held up my hand and found a new friend. Hi. Dia smiled, bright-eyed with roundly plump brown cheeks. She reminded me of a chipmunk. We played in the warm sunshine, tiny boots crunching through the fiery quilted patchwork of fall leaves while they chatted. Wow. While our parents chatted or something. It's been too long since we've heard about the parents, so they doesn't really work here. While our parents chatted, maybe. So do you come here often? My soon-to-be stepfather's, oh, that's interesting. My soon-to-be stepfather's interest clear in his casual lean and admiring gaze. So I just get a little tripped up in who he's talking to. I think it just needs to be a little more obvious. And we need to know that Elizabeth is overhearing this, right? In order to stay with Elizabeth's perspective. So do you come here often? I overheard my soon-to-be stepfather ask my mom, his interest clear in his casual lean and admiring gaze. It's a bit much for a 3-year or a 4-year-old. Probably wouldn't, definitely wouldn't be thinking this at the time, right? So maybe say something about either leave it out or in hindsight, his interest was clear. Thinking back on the incident, his interest was clear. Then my timer just went, but I'm going to finish this section. Just keep us in Elizabeth's perspective of a 4-year-old girl. And if you're going to jump out of that intentionally. Yes, this is one of our favorite places to walk. I come here to run too. I'm training for a 5K, she said proudly. When I'm not busy working, of course. I'm working 2 jobs these days. She was a receptionist, secretary for a publishing company, and did something similar at the Washington Post. Intense, competitive, articulate, and opinionated, she talked incessantly about things she found interesting. She launched into one of her stories, absorbing his attention like a sponge. Okay, so it strikes me that mom is being so open with this stranger at the park. Maybe she's comforted that he has a daughter. Yeah, but that's okay. If that's what she did, that's what she did, and those were different times. And maybe she did that then. Wouldn't it? Just strikes me as odd. That's all. I'm going to stop there. I'm intrigued, and I'm certainly going to read more. I like how Elizabeth has set things up, and she's shown us. I love how she's shown us several different scenes that are giving us an idea of who she is, who her mom is, a little bit about who her dad is, and now who this guy Lewis is, soon to be, as she says, soon to be stepfather, which really grabs us when she says that, doesn't it? So, really well done. A few trouble spots that might need a bit of cleaning up, but I'm definitely intrigued and going to read more. And I think it's the different scenes that she does so well that are drawing me into this. So nice job, Elizabeth. Again, check the comments if you want a review of your own work. I'll put some notes in the comments about how to do that and how to get in touch with me. All right, see y'all next time.